Imagine this. You're a 32-year-old woman standing on the private beach of a five-star resort in the Bahamas, surrounded by 60 millionaire guests, and your own father is shouting at security, "Remove her immediately! This person is not one of our guests!" Really? How would that make you feel? That wasn't imagination. That was my reality 3 weeks ago at Sapphire Cay Resort. The humiliation had started earlier with an email to all 23 family members. Brooke's presence would significantly lower the caliber of attendees at this exclusive gathering. My own father wrote that. 1 hour after I'd called him about my $50 million tech contract. 8 years of being the family disappointment. 8 years of choosing Silicon Valley over his $2.3 billion real estate empire. 8 years of being erased from family photos, conversations, futures. My name is Brooke, and standing there with security approaching, investors laughing, my mother hiding her face in shame. I knew it was time to reveal what I'd hidden for 18 months. I owned the very ground they stood on. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. The Caldwell name carries weight in East Coast real estate circles. My father, Richard Caldwell, built his empire from 3 rental properties in Hartford to a portfolio worth $2.3 billion spanning from Boston to Miami. Every business magazine on the Eastern Seaboard had featured his face at least once. That stern, patrician profile that commanded boardrooms and intimidated competitors. Growing up, our dinner table conversations revolved around cap rates, leveraged buyouts, and the right kind of people. My brother Marcus, 3 years older, absorbed these lessons like a sponge. By 25, he was managing 12 luxury developments, each one a gleaming monument to the Caldwell legacy. The golden child, they called him at family gatherings, while I sat quietly in the corner, coding on my laptop. My sin? Walking away from Harvard Business School after 1 semester to join a startup accelerator in Palo Alto. "You're throwing away your birthright," Richard had thundered that December night in 2016. For what? Playing with computers? The irony was that my playing had resulted in 3 successful exits by age 30. My latest company, which focused on AI-driven property management systems, had just been valued at $200 million in our Series B round. But I'd learned long ago that Silicon Valley victories meant nothing in Richard's world. At last year's Thanksgiving dinner, when Aunt Margaret asked about my work, Richard cut in before I could answer. "Brooke's still pursuing her hobby entrepreneurship," he'd said, carving the turkey with unnecessary force. Unlike Marcus, who just closed the Waterfront Plaza deal. While Marcus managed buildings, I was building algorithms that would revolutionize property management. Not that anyone asked. The family retreat invitation arrived in everyone's inbox on January 5th. Everyone except mine. I only knew about it because my cousin Emma accidentally forwarded me the thread, thinking I'd been included. Sapphire Cay Resort, March 14th, 21st, the subject line read. Caldwell Family and Associates Annual Gathering. When I called my mother Patricia about it, her voice took on that familiar apologetic tone. "Your father thinks it's best if you sit this one out, dear. Maybe next year." Always next year. Always maybe. The Christmas party 2 months earlier should have prepared me for this. Richard had hosted 200 guests at the Ritz-Carlton ballroom, clients, partners, politicians. When Senator Walsh asked to meet his children, Richard had guided him straight to Marcus, his hand firm on the senator's shoulder. "My son, the future of Caldwell Properties," he'd announced. I'd been standing 10 feet away, holding the champagne tray he'd asked me to pass around because the servers looked overwhelmed. Senator Walsh's eyes had flickered to me briefly. "And this young lady?" "Oh, that's just Brooke," Richard had said, already steering the senator toward the bar. "She's between ventures at the moment." Between ventures. I'd closed a $50 million Series B 2 weeks prior. Later that night, I'd overheard him telling the Whitmore family, owners of several Caribbean resorts, that he had one son carrying on the family tradition. Mrs. Whitmore had glanced at me sympathetically. "But surely Brooke has chosen a different path," Richard had interrupted, his tone suggesting that path led nowhere worth discussing. I stood there holding the champagne tray he'd asked me to pass around while he erased my existence. The question was, how much longer would I let him? 3 international investment groups were circling Brooktech Hospitality, my latest venture. We weren't just building software anymore. We were acquiring properties, transforming them with our technology, and flipping them for 3 times the investment. The Yamamoto Group from Tokyo, Sanders International from London, and Vertex Partners from Dubai had all expressed interest in a $500 million funding round that would let us scale globally. But there was a problem. These weren't Silicon Valley VCs who celebrated family rebellion. These were old money institutions that valued stability, harmony, and what Mr. Yamamoto delicately called aligned family interests. During our last video call, Yamamoto had pulled up a Business Insider article about the Caldwell family. The headline read, "Real Estate Dynasty's Black Sheep Daughter Goes Rogue in Tech." His expression remained neutral, but his question wasn't. Miss Caldwell, in Japanese business culture, family unity signals corporate stability. Can you assure us there are no conflicts that might affect our partnership? I'd smiled, professional and poised. My business relationships remain entirely separate from personal matters, Mr. Yamamoto. He'd nodded, but I caught him exchanging glances with his team. Later, my assistant forwarded me an email from Sanders International's due diligence team. They were concerned about potential reputational risks arising from public family disputes. The deadline for the funding decision was March 20th, 5 days after the family retreat ended. If news of my father publicly excluding me from the family gathering reached these investors, it wouldn't just be embarrassing. It would confirm their worst fears about instability and conflict. One of the investors attending Richard's retreat was Peterson from Vertex Partners. He'd specifically mentioned looking forward to meeting the entire Caldwell family at the gathering. 8 years. That's how long I'd been the family's cautionary tale. "Don't be like Brooke" became the unspoken message at every family gathering. When my younger cousins talked about their dreams, Richard would interrupt with, "Dreams don't pay mortgages, ask Brooke." The family trust documents had been amended 3 times since I left for California. Each revision pushed me further from any inheritance, any stake in the Caldwell legacy. Not that I needed their money. My own success had proven that. But being systematically erased from your own family's future leaves scars that success can't heal. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, had been direct during our last session. "Brooke, you're at a crossroads. Either you establish boundaries with your family, or you risk a complete breakdown. The constant invalidation is affecting your health, your relationships, even your business decisions." She was right. I'd been sleeping 3 hours a night, triple-checking every decision, over-preparing for every meeting. The imposter syndrome my father had planted was growing like a weed despite my achievements. That morning, my cousin Emma had texted me, "Uncle Richard is telling everyone you're not coming because you can't afford it. Maybe just apologize? For family peace?" Apologize? For what? For succeeding without his permission? For building something he couldn't control? I opened my laptop and navigated to a folder I'd labeled Insurance. Inside were documents I'd been sitting on for 18 months. The Sapphire K ownership papers, all 847 pages of them. The acquisition had been the biggest risk of my career, but also the most strategic. I'd bought the very resort where Richard held court every March, where he showcased his success to the world. This wasn't about revenge. This was about survival. I called Richard at his office on January 8th, 3 days after discovering I'd been excluded from the retreat. His assistant put me through immediately. She always did, probably the only person in his orbit who still treated me with respect. "Brooke." Not hello or how are you, just my name, flat and dismissive. "I heard about the retreat invitation, or rather, my lack of one." "It's for your own good," he said, papers shuffling in the background. "The caliber of attendees this year is particularly high. The Whitmores will be there, The Yamamoto Group, several senators. You wouldn't understand their level of discourse. I just closed a $50 million deal, Dad. A pause. Monopoly money from venture capitalists isn't real business, Brooke. It's real enough to. Marcus is being promoted to President of East Coast Operations, he interrupted. The announcement will happen at the retreat. Real success, not Silicon Valley smoke and mirrors. I don't want any distractions from his moment. Distractions. That's what I'd become. I'm your daughter. You're someone who chose to abandon everything I built for you. The retreat is for people who contribute to the Caldwell legacy, not those who run from it. Dad, I have a board meeting. Patricia has your cousin Emma's wedding registry if you want to actually support your family for once. The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at my laptop screen where the Sapphire K ownership documents were still open. He'd mentioned the Whitmores would be there. Sarah Whitmore, the woman who'd sold me the resort, would be watching Richard parade around property he didn't own. The irony was almost poetic. The Caldwell Family Retreat 2024 WhatsApp group exploded with activity that evening. 47 messages in 10 minutes, and I watched them roll in from my laptop. Marcus had removed me from the group, but Emma was screenshotting everything. Marcus posted photos of the presidential villa at Sapphire K. Reserve the crown jewel for the week, $50,000 a night, but Dad says I've earned it. 23 heart emojis followed. Cousin Tyler. Can't wait for the yacht tour on day 3. Aunt Margaret. Richard always knows how to show us the best in life. Uncle James. Bringing my new CFO. She needs to see how real business families operate. Then Marcus again. FYI, I've arranged a private dinner with the Whitmore family. Major acquisition opportunity. This is why you stick with traditional business, not fad investments. Emma's screenshot came with her commentary. I'm so sorry, Brooke. This is cruel. The next message made me pause. Marcus had posted a photo of the retreat agenda. Day 5, 7 p.m. Grand Ballroom, special announcement and celebration. He'd added, Dad's keeping it secret, but let's just say the future of Caldwell Properties will be revealed. Another cousin chimed in. Brooke's not on the attendee list? Marcus responded instantly. She has her own things going on. We can't all be included in everything. Aunt Carol added, For your own good, sweetie. At Brooke. Even though I wasn't in the chat. I minimized WhatsApp and opened my resort management portal. There it was. Marcus Caldwell's reservation for the presidential villa, pending approval. 7 nights, $350,000 total. I clicked approve, then typed a note in the system only Daniel Morrison would see. Approved. Prepare for March 15th announcement as discussed. I approved their reservation from my owner portal while they celebrated excluding me. Has your family ever excluded you from something important while pretending it was for your own good? If this story resonates with you, please share your experience in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when they all arrive at my resort. The revelation is more satisfying than you can imagine. The universe works in mysterious ways. 3 years ago, at a hospitality technology conference in Miami, I'd sat next to an elegant woman in her 60s who looked utterly lost during a presentation about AI-driven booking systems. That woman was Sarah Whitmore. I own 5 Caribbean resorts, she'd whispered to me during the break, and I have no idea what that speaker was talking about. My grandchildren keep saying we need to modernize, but it's like they're speaking Mandarin. I'd spent the next 6 hours with Sarah, translating tech jargon into practical applications. By dinner, I'd mapped out a complete digital transformation strategy for her properties on a napkin. She'd insisted on paying me for consultation. I'd refused. Then let me at least buy you dinner whenever you're in the Caribbean, she'd said. We'd stayed in touch. Email threads with subject lines like, Help, what's a cloud? And, Is blockchain real or a scam? Filled my inbox. I'd guided her through 3 successful tech implementations, always refusing payment. Sarah had increased her resort's efficiency by 40% and their bookings by 60%. Then, in September 2022, she'd called with a different request. Brooke, I'm ready to retire, but I'm terrified of selling to the wrong person. These corporate vultures, including your father, no offense, they'd destroy everything my husband and I built. They'd fire our staff, tear down our sustainable practices, turn our family resort into another soulless luxury chain. What are you looking for in a buyer? I'd asked. Someone who understands that hospitality isn't about marble lobbies. It's about making people feel valued. Someone who sees technology as a tool for better service, not just cost-cutting. Someone like you, actually. The seed had been planted. November 2022. After 2 months of due diligence, the deal was ready to close. My lawyer, James Harrison, had reviewed every page of the 847 document package 3 times. This is airtight, Brooke. But are you sure you want to do this through Brooke Tech Hospitality Holdings? Why not your personal name? Strategic reasons, I'd told him. Though the real reason was simpler. I didn't want Richard finding out until the perfect moment. The wire transfer notification came through at 3:47 p.m. on November 15th. $127.3 million successfully transferred to Whitmore Family Trust. Transaction complete. Sarah had insisted on unusual terms. She and her family would retain 49% ownership for 5 years, ensuring continuity. Daniel Morrison, who'd managed the resort for 15 years, would remain general manager with a special clause. He reported directly to me, not to any board or advisory committee. I want someone I trust running daily operations, I'd told Sarah. Daniel knows every guest, every staff member, every stone on that property. The notarized deed came back with its official gold seal. Sarah had included a handwritten note. The bank confirmed, wire complete. You are now majority owner of Sapphire K Resort. Make us proud. I'd filed the documents carefully, telling no one except James. My own family didn't know. My investors didn't know. Even my executive team thought I'd taken a 2-week vacation to recharge when I'd actually been in the Bahamas, learning every inch of my new property. Daniel and I had spent hours planning. He understood the situation with my family, having witnessed Richard's peacocking during previous retreats. When do you want to reveal this? He'd asked. When it matters most, I'd replied. February 28th, 2 weeks before the retreat. Daniel Morrison and I connected via encrypted video call, a precaution that seemed paranoid but necessary. Richard had connections everywhere, and premature revelation would ruin everything. I've reviewed the complete guest list for your father's retreat, Daniel said, his British accent lending gravity to every word. 200 confirmed attendees for the March 15th gala. Your father specifically requested the grand ballroom with our most elaborate setup. Perfect. He always did love an audience. Daniel pulled up the reservation details on his screen. He's also requested that I personally ensure only the highest caliber of service for these distinguished guests. His words. Of course he did. I studied the timeline. Daniel, I need you to prepare something specific for the evening of the 15th. I'm listening. During the gala, there will likely be speeches. Knowing my father, he'll want to announce Marcus's promotion with maximum fanfare. That's when I need you to intervene. Daniel nodded slowly. With the ownership documentation? Exactly. But it has to appear natural, necessary, not vindictive. Leave that to me. I've been in hospitality for 30 years. I know how to deliver difficult news with grace. He paused. Your father has been particularly demanding in his communications. 3 emails about the wine selection alone. He's stressed that this retreat will set the standard for the Caldwell family's next generation. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. One more thing, I added. Sarah Whitmore will be attending. Make sure she's seated where she can see everything clearly. Already arranged. Front table, perfect sightline to the podium. Then we're ready. Daniel smiled slightly. May I say, Ms. Caldwell, this is the most interesting ownership situation I've encountered in my career. March 14th, 2 o'clock p.m. I stepped off my chartered flight onto the private runway at Sapphire Cay, the Caribbean sun immediately warming my face. Instead of heading to the main resort, my driver took me to the owner's residence, a secluded villa on the eastern cliff that most guests didn't even know existed. From my terrace, I could see the main resort sprawling below. The beach club was buzzing with activity. Through my binoculars, yes, I'd brought binoculars, I spotted them immediately. Marcus, holding court at the pool bar, gesticulating wildly to a group of men in designer swimwear. Richard, seated under a cabana, 3 laptops open on the table before him, still working even in paradise. My phone buzzed. Emma. They're all here. Marcus is telling everyone about his game-changing announcement tomorrow. Your mom asked about you once. Your dad shut it down. I watched Marcus point toward the presidential villa, his chest puffed with pride. Even from this distance, I could read his body language, the same preening peacock stance he'd had since childhood when he knew he was winning. Richard stood, and the entire beach club seemed to pivot toward him. He pointed at the villa too, and I caught fragments of voices carried by the wind. My legacy. Next generation. Real success. Then something unexpected happened. A man I recognized as Mr. Peterson from Vertex Partners glanced around, and I heard him ask clearly, "Will your daughter be joining us?" Richard's response carried perfectly across the water. "I only have one child here who matters to Caldwell Properties' future." Peterson nodded, but I saw him whisper something to his wife. She looked directly up toward my villa, though she couldn't possibly see me. 5 p.m. I decided to make my presence known, wearing a simple white sundress and sandals. Deliberately understated compared to the designer parade by the pool, I walked into the beach club bar. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. Marcus's mojito froze halfway to his lips. "Security!" Richard's voice boomed across the space. "This person isn't a registered guest." Every head turned. 50, maybe 60 people, all staring as 2 security guards approached. I recognized them both. Daniel had introduced me to the entire staff months ago. But they played their parts perfectly, looking concerned and official. "How did you even afford a day pass?" Marcus laughed, recovering from his shock. "Did you max out another credit card?" The investors' wives whispered behind manicured hands. Several phones appeared, probably recording what they assumed would be premium gossip content. "Sir," one guard said to Richard, "should we escort her out?" "Immediately," Richard replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is exactly why we maintain standards at our gatherings. Some people simply don't belong." My mother materialized at my elbow, her fingers digging into my arm as she pulled me toward a corner. "Brooke, don't make a scene. You're embarrassing yourself and the family." "I'm embarrassing the family?" I kept my voice level, aware that dozens of people were straining to hear. "I was invited here, Mother." "By whom?" Richard had followed us, his face red with indignation. "This is my retreat, my guests, my rules." Before I could respond, Daniel Morrison appeared, impeccable in his resort uniform. "Mr. Caldwell," he said smoothly, "I apologize for the confusion. If I could have a word?" Richard waved him off. "Handle this, Morrison. Remove her. Now." Richard wasn't done. He turned to address his audience, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "I apologize for this interruption, everyone. Family disappointments are unfortunately universal, aren't they?" Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. He was turning my presence into a teachable moment, a cautionary tale for the assembled elite. "You see," he continued, gesturing toward me like I was an exhibit, "this is what happens when children reject wisdom and stability for pipe dreams. My daughter here abandoned a Harvard MBA, rejected her position in our family empire, all to play startup games in Silicon Valley." Marcus joined in, emboldened. "She actually thinks her little tech experiments compare to real estate, to actual, tangible assets." "How much was your last valuation, Brooke?" Richard asked mockingly. 50 million? 100? Funny money from VCs who'll never see returns. He turned to Mr. Peterson. This is why Vertex Partners invests in proven industries. Isn't that right? Peterson shifted uncomfortably but nodded. Traditional assets do provide more security. Senator Walsh, drink in hand, added his wisdom. Every family has one, Richard, the one who just can't quite make it work. I stood perfectly still, memorizing every face that laughed, every person who looked away in secondhand embarrassment, every supposed friend of the family who said nothing. Not for revenge, but for clarity. These were the people my father valued over his own daughter. Perhaps, I said quietly, but in the hushed atmosphere my words carried, we should discuss this tomorrow at the gala. I understand you have a special announcement planned? Richard's eyes narrowed. You won't be there. Daniel Morrison cleared his throat. Actually, sir, about tomorrow's arrangements. March 15th, 7:02 p.m. The grand ballroom doors opened to reveal Sapphire K's finest presentation. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across tables dressed in ivory silk. 200 guests in black tie attire filed in, the men in custom tuxedos, the women dripping in jewelry that could fund small nations. Richard had claimed the head table, naturally. Marcus sat to his right, practically glowing with anticipation. Patricia wore her nervous smile, the one that appeared when she sensed trouble but couldn't identify its source. I watched from the mezzanine level, hidden in shadow. Daniel had arranged everything perfectly. My entrance would come at precisely the right moment. Richard took the stage at 7:30, champagne flute in hand. The room quieted immediately. Power recognizes power, and everyone here knew Richard Caldwell commanded attention. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, he began, his voice resonating with practiced authority. Tonight marks a pivotal moment for Caldwell Properties. For 40 years, I've built an empire on one principle: excellence isn't negotiable. Applause rippled through the room. The Caldwell name means something in this room. It means success, stability, and standards that never waver. Which is why tonight I'm proud to announce that my son, Marcus Caldwell, will assume the role of President of East Coast Operations. Marcus stood, basking in the applause. Cameras flashed. The Whitmore family clapped politely from their front table, though Sarah's eyes kept drifting toward the side entrance where she knew I waited. Marcus represents everything Caldwell Properties stands for, Richard continued. Unlike those who chase ephemeral tech fantasies, he understands that real wealth is built on solid ground. Daniel appeared at the edge of the stage, folder in hand. Mr. Caldwell, I apologize for the interruption. Richard's jaw tightened at the interruption. Morrison, this can wait until— I'm afraid it cannot, Mr. Caldwell, Daniel said, his British accent lending authority to his words. He stepped onto the stage, his leather portfolio commanding attention. This concerns the ownership structure of Sapphire K Resort, and by law, I'm required to disclose this to all registered guests. A murmur ran through the crowd. Richard's face shifted from annoyance to concern. What are you talking about? Daniel opened the portfolio, revealing documents with official gold seals visible even from the back tables. There's been a change in ownership that affects tonight's gathering. That's impossible, Marcus interjected, moving toward the microphone. We've been coming here for 7 years. The Whitmores are here tonight, Daniel confirmed, gesturing to Sarah's table. Mrs. Whitmore, would you please stand? Sarah rose gracefully, her silver hair catching the light. The room held its breath. This wasn't part of the program. Richard's carefully orchestrated evening was veering off script. What is this about? Richard demanded, his composure cracking. Daniel withdrew the top document, holding it so the gold seal caught the light. Effective November 15, 2022, Brook Tech Hospitality Holdings acquired 51% ownership of Sapphire K Resort. The name hung in the air. Brook Tech. Even those unfamiliar with my company recognized the connection to my name. The CEO and majority owner, Daniel continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom, is Ms. Brooke Caldwell. The gasp that followed could have been heard in Miami. Every head swiveled, searching. Richard stood frozen, his champagne glass tilted dangerously. Sarah Whitmore's voice cut through the shock. The best decision we ever made. The ballroom doors opened and I walked in. Not from the service entrance, not from the side. Through the main doors, like the owner I was. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A black Saint Laurent gown that meant business. Diamonds that caught the light with every step. The crowd parted unconsciously, creating a direct path to the stage. Daniel clicked a remote and the massive screen behind him illuminated with the ownership documents. My name, my signature, the official seal of the Bahamas Business Registry. The date, November 15th, 2022. This is preposterous, Richard's voice cracked. Some kind of joke. No joke, Mr. Caldwell, Daniel said calmly. He clicked again. The screen now showed a Forbes article. Brook Tech Hospitality, the $2 billion disruption nobody saw coming. Sarah Whitmore stood again. 16 months ago, I had a choice. Sell to Caldwell Properties for $150 million or sell to Brook for $127 million. I chose Brooke because she understood that hospitality isn't about intimidation or status. It's about making people feel valued. I stepped onto the stage, taking the microphone Daniel offered. The silence was absolute. Good evening, everyone, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Welcome to my resort. Marcus stumbled backward, catching himself on a chair. Patricia's hand covered her mouth. The investors I'd worried about were all leaning forward, fascinated. Ms. Caldwell, Daniel announced to the room, would you please join us on stage, in your resort? I was already there, standing where Richard had stood moments before, looking out at the same crowd that had laughed at me yesterday. I want to be clear, I continued. Every dollar of your 7-night stay, all $3.2 million of it, has been covered, by me. Consider it my gift to the Caldwell family, even those who think I lower their caliber. The callback to his email wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. This moment was 8 years in the making, and we're just getting to the best part. If you've ever had your own moment of vindication, when the truth finally came out, I want to hear about it in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs to know their worth isn't determined by others' opinions. And hit that like button if you believe in justice served with style. Standing at that podium, looking out at 200 stunned faces, I felt 8 years of dismissal evaporate. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. For those wondering, I continued, adjusting the microphone, Brook Tech Hospitality isn't a pipe dream or monopoly money. We're a technology-forward hospitality company that's revolutionizing how resorts operate. Sapphire K was our first acquisition. It won't be our last. I clicked the remote Daniel had handed me. The screen showed our portfolio, 5 properties under contract, $2 billion in committed funding, partnerships with 3 major hotel chains. The Whitmore family remains our partners, owning 49%, because unlike some people, I let my gaze rest on Richard. I believe in honoring those who built something beautiful. Mr. Peterson from Vertex Partners stood up. Ms. Caldwell, this is extraordinary. We should discuss. After dinner, Mr. Peterson. Tonight is about family. I turned back to the crowd. You see, I learned everything about business from my father. He taught me that perception matters, that stages and audiences amplify messages, that timing is everything. He just never expected me to be such a good student. I gestured to Daniel. Mr. Morrison has been the exceptional general manager here for 15 years. He'll ensure your stay is memorable. As for the presidential villa that my brother Marcus has been enjoying, that reservation was personally approved by me. Another gift. Marcus's face cycled through colors I didn't know humans could achieve. Please, everyone, enjoy your dinner. Celebrate Marcus's promotion. Toast the Caldwell legacy. I stepped back from the microphone. After all, you're all guests in my house now, and I believe in exceptional hospitality. The applause started slowly, then built to thunder. The aftermath was immediate and chaotic. Richard lunged toward the stage, his face purple with rage. "This is fraud! I'll sue!" "On what grounds?" James Harrison, my lawyer, materialized from the crowd. I'd flown him in that morning, knowing this moment would need legal clarity. The purchase was legitimate, filed properly with all authorities. Your daughter owns this resort, Mr. Caldwell, has for 16 months. Daniel pulled up the booking system on the ballroom screen, showing the Caldwell reservation. At the bottom, in the approval field, authorized by B. Caldwell, owner. "You can't do this," Marcus sputtered, approaching the stage. "This is our retreat, our tradition." "Which I've honored," I replied calmly. "You're all here, aren't you? Enjoying the presidential villa I approved? The gala I'm paying for?" The investors had abandoned their tables, surrounding me with business cards and requests. Mr. Yamamoto reached me first. "Sarah Whitmore spoke highly of you." She was right. "That 500 million we discussed? Let's make it happen." "Miss Caldwell!" 3 reporters who'd been covering Marcus's promotion had pivoted entirely. "Is it true Brooktech is acquiring the entire Whitmore portfolio?" Richard tried to push through the crowd. "Don't answer them. This is a family matter." "Family?" I turned to face him directly. "You told Senator Walsh yesterday you only had one child who mattered. You were right. Marcus is your only child now. I'm done being your disappointment." Patricia reached for me, tears streaming. "Brooke, please, we can discuss." "We could have discussed it any time in the last 8 years, Mom. You chose silence." The crowd was documenting everything, phones everywhere. By morning, this would be across every business blog in America. I turned back to the assembled crowd, shifting into CEO mode. The personal had been addressed, now for the professional. "Since we're all here," I announced, "let me share Brooktech Hospitality's vision. We're investing $50 million in Sapphire K's transformation over the next 18 months. Solar panels, water reclamation systems, AI-driven energy management. We project 300% ROI within 5 years. The screen behind me shifted to architectural renderings, sustainability metrics, financial projections. Real numbers, not the monopoly money Richard had mocked. "We're not destroying what the Whitmores built," I continued. "We're enhancing it with technology that reduces costs by 40% while improving guest satisfaction scores." 5 investors immediately requested meetings. Daniel fielded them with practiced efficiency, scheduling appointments for the next morning in the resort's business center, which I had renovated with state-of-the-art video conferencing systems. "Furthermore," I added, watching Richard sink into a chair, "Sapphire K will be the flagship property for Brooktech Hospitality's expansion. We're targeting a $2 billion portfolio by 2030. Mr. Peterson from Vertex approached the stage. "The board will want to discuss this immediately. This changes our entire perspective on your company." "Due diligence documents are available," James Harrison announced. "Ms. Caldwell has been preparing for this expansion for 2 years. Richard stood abruptly, Marcus at his side. Without a word, they headed for the exit. The crowd parted, but not out of respect, out of awkwardness. Everyone had witnessed the Empire's emperor revealed as powerless in his daughter's domain. Patricia lingered, torn between following her husband and staying to hear more. She chose Richard, as always, but not before looking back at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before, respect mixed with regret. Mixed. An hour later, Richard demanded a private meeting. Daniel escorted him, Patricia, and Marcus to the resort library, a room I'd specifically chosen for its recording equipment and witnesses positioned discreetly nearby. "How dare you humiliate me in front of my peers?" Richard seethed, pacing like a caged animal. "I simply revealed the truth," I replied, seated calmly behind the mahogany desk. "You humiliated yourself with your choices. This is theft. You used insider information. I used publicly available information and my own relationship with Sarah Whitmore, a relationship you could have had if you'd treated her with respect instead of trying to lowball her." Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. "I'll sue you for defamation for..." "For what? Approving your reservation? Paying for your stay?" I pulled out my phone, showing them the email thread. Or for keeping the email where Dad said I would lower the caliber of attendees, the one he CC'd to 47 people? Patricia finally spoke, tears streaming. Brooke, we're still family. Can't we find a way? We are family, Mom. Which is why I'm not charging you for the $3.2 million retreat. Why I'm not suing for defamation after Dad told 200 people I was a failure. Why I'm simply asking you to leave me alone. You vindictive little... Richard started. Careful, James Harrison interrupted from the doorway. Anything you say is being recorded for potential legal proceedings. Richard's face went white. You're recording this? Standard procedure for all business meetings in this room, I said evenly. You taught me that, Dad. Document everything. The defeat in his eyes was complete. The student had surpassed the master. Within 48 hours, the business world had chosen sides, and they hadn't chosen Richard's. 3 major investors pulled out of Caldwell Properties' latest development project, citing concerns about leadership judgment. The Wall Street Journal ran a piece with the headline, Caldwell Properties Faces Leadership Questions After Resort Revelation. The article detailed how Richard had publicly disowned his daughter, only to discover she'd outmaneuvered him in the acquisition game. The board called an emergency meeting. Emma, who worked in investor relations, leaked me the details. 8 hours of heated discussion about Richard's failure to recognize and retain talent within his own family. Caldwell Properties stock dropped 8% in 2 days, erasing $184 million in market cap. The board was asking hard questions. If Richard couldn't see the potential in his own daughter, what other opportunities was he missing? Senator Walsh, who'd laughed about every family having one, quietly canceled 3 scheduled golf games with Richard. His assistant called Patricia to explain he was reassessing his associations. Marcus's promotion was put on temporary hold, pending a comprehensive review of succession planning. The board wanted to know why the heir apparent hadn't known about a major acquisition in the hospitality space. Wasn't he supposed to be the expert? The business blogs were brutal. TechCrunch wrote, while Richard Caldwell was building walls, his daughter Brooke was building bridges and buying islands. Forbes ran a feature. The $127 million secret, how Brooke Caldwell turned family rejection into business revolution. My favorite was from the Harvard Business Review, the Caldwell case study, when nepotism blinds leaders to real talent. Richard released a terse statement through PR. Family matters should remain private. Caldwell Properties remains focused on its core mission. But everyone knew the truth. The emperor had no clothes and his daughter owned the castle. While Richard's world crumbled, mine exploded with opportunity. The Yamamoto Group's $500 million investment was signed within a week. Mr. Yamamoto posted a photo of our contract signing on LinkedIn with the caption, "Investing in leaders who understand that respect and innovation go hand in hand." It got 47,000 likes in 24 hours. 7 resort owners contacted me about acquisitions. They'd all dealt with Caldwell Properties' aggressive tactics before and preferred selling to someone who understood hospitality as service, not dominance. Forbes fast-tracked their cover story. The photographer wanted to shoot at Sapphire Cay, specifically in the presidential villa Marcus had vacated early. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Sarah Whitmore joined our board as senior advisor. At her first meeting, she said, "I've worked with dozens of executives. Brooke is the only one who ever refused payment for helping me." That's when I knew she understood true value. The most surprising support came from within the Caldwell empire. 12 relatives reached out privately, sharing their own stories of Richard's dismissals and Marcus's entitlement. Cousin Emma texted, "We always knew you were special. Uncle Richard was just too proud to see it." My Aunt Diana, Richard's own sister, sent a handwritten note. "Your grandmother would be proud. She always said the smartest Caldwell would be the one who escaped." Even some of Caldwell Properties' employees quietly connected on LinkedIn. Inspired by your journey. The 5-property acquisition I'd been negotiating closed ahead of schedule. The sellers had seen the news and decided I was exactly the kind of owner they wanted. Brooktech Hospitality's valuation hit $2 billion 3 years ahead of projection. Success, I learned, was the best response to rejection. 2 weeks after the gala, Patricia called. "Can we meet? Just us?" I agreed, choosing a neutral cafe in Manhattan, far from both our territories. She looked older, frailer, the weight of choosing sides finally showing. "Your father is struggling," she began, stirring her untouched latte. "He won't leave his study. The board is pressuring him to step down." "That's not my problem, Mom." "I know." She met my eyes for perhaps the first time in years. "I failed you. I chose peace over justice, silence over truth. I let him erase you because it was easier than fighting." The admission hung between us, heavy with years of unspoken pain. "I can't undo the past 8 years," she continued. "But I need you to know. I see it now. What you built, who you became despite us. Maybe even because of our neglect. Mom, please, could you consider being the bigger person? For family unity?" There it was. Even in her apology, the request to sacrifice myself for Richard's comfort. "No," I said gently but firmly. "Being the bigger person doesn't mean being a doormat. I love you, Mom, but I won't sacrifice my self-worth for his comfort anymore." She nodded, tears falling silently. "I understand. I just had to ask." "You chose to ask, just like you chose silence for 8 years." I stood, leaving money for both our drinks. "When you're ready to have a relationship with me that doesn't revolve around managing Richard's emotions, call me. Until then, this is goodbye." I walked out, feeling lighter than I had in years. Some bridges, once burned, illuminate the path forward. Marcus's email arrived 3 weeks later, clearly drafted by his lawyer. Every line reeked of legal coverage and false contrition. "Dear Brooke, after reflection on recent events, I recognize that certain statements may have been construed as dismissive of your achievements. In the interest of family harmony and potential business synergies, I propose a meeting to discuss collaboration between Caldwell Properties and Brook Tech Hospitality." I knew the truth. Emma had told me Marcus's promotion was officially dead, and investors were demanding to know why the heir apparent had missed such a massive opportunity in hospitality. He needed a win, and partnering with me was his only play. My response was brief but professional. "Marcus, thank you for reaching out. However, Brooktech Hospitality's acquisition strategy doesn't align with Caldwell Properties' portfolio. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. If you're interested in learning about hospitality technology, I recommend starting with the basics, perhaps the same conferences where I met the Whitmores. You might find that building your own relationships, rather than inheriting them, leads to more authentic success. P.S. I've CC'd this response to the Caldwell Properties Board, as I believe transparency in family business matters is essential." The CC was petty, perhaps, but calculated. The board needed to know Marcus was trying to leverage my success after participating in my humiliation. Within hours, Richard called Patricia screaming about my betrayal. But what was I betraying exactly? The family that had betrayed me first? Marcus never responded, but LinkedIn showed he'd viewed my profile 17 times in the following week. He'd also enrolled in 3 online courses about hospitality technology. Perhaps he was finally ready to build something of his own. 1 month after the gala, I sent an email to all 23 members of the Caldwell family. The subject line, "Moving Forward." "Dear family, recent events have necessitated a clarification of our relationships going forward. After considerable thought, I'm establishing the following boundaries. Business. Brooktech Hospitality and Caldwell Properties will remain completely separate entities. Any attempts to leverage our family connection for business purposes will be declined and documented. Personal. I'm open to holiday cards and life milestone acknowledgments. I will not attend events where my presence is conditional on accepting disrespect. Financial. The trust fund allocated to me, which I never accessed, has been donated to the Women's Entrepreneurship Foundation. This decision is final and non-negotiable. Communication. Please direct all correspondence through my personal email, not my business channels. Any communication that includes insults, manipulation, or attempts to rewrite history will be blocked. I'm not cutting you off. I'm cutting the toxic patterns that have defined us for too long. Those willing to build new, respectful relationships are welcome to try. Those who can't accept my success or my boundaries are welcome to stay in the past. This isn't about punishment. It's about peace. Brooke. The responses varied. Some relatives, like Aunt Diana and Cousin Emma, expressed support and understanding. Others, predictably allied with Richard, accused me of destroying the family. Uncle James wrote, "You've changed. Success has made you cruel." I didn't respond. He was half right. I had changed. But success hadn't made me cruel. It had made me clear. The email was screenshot and shared within the business community as an example of professional boundary setting. A leadership blog called it the most elegant family business divorce letter ever written. The board vote came in April. Richard would step down as CEO of Caldwell Properties by year-end. The decision was mutual, according to the press release. But Emma told me the truth. It was unanimous except for Richard's own vote. Marcus wasn't promoted. Instead, the board initiated a search for an external CEO, someone with fresh perspective and modern vision. The subtext was clear, someone who wouldn't mistake nepotism for merit. Richard tried to control the narrative, giving an interview to the Wall Street Journal where he blamed my ambush for destabilizing the company. But the journalist fact-checked in real time, noting that I'd owned Sapphire K for 16 months before the reveal. The headline read, "Former CEO Caldwell struggles to accept new reality." An industry newsletter was more direct. Brooke Caldwell represents the future. Her father, unfortunately, the past. The business community's verdict was swift and merciless. At the real estate summit in May, Richard's keynote was rescheduled to a smaller room after low registration. Meanwhile, I was invited to speak at the main stage about innovation in hospitality. During my talk, I never mentioned Richard once. I didn't need to. Everyone knew the story. Instead, I focused on sustainable growth, technological integration, and the importance of recognizing talent, regardless of its source. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Later, an attendee approached me. "Your father's in the back row," he whispered. I looked but didn't acknowledge him. He'd chosen to attend my session, to sit in my audience, in my shadow. The reversal was complete, but it brought no joy. Only relief that I no longer needed his validation. He left before the Q&A, but not before 2 photographers captured him watching his daughter command the room he once ruled. September 2024. 6 months after the revelation. Brooktech Hospitality's valuation hit $2 billion after our 5th acquisition closed. The business press called it the fastest hospitality empire ever built. What they didn't understand was that I'd been building it for years, just quietly, without fanfare or family approval. Sapphire K earned the #1 Caribbean resort rating on 3 major travel platforms. Our sustainable technology reduced operating costs by 43% while improving guest satisfaction to 97%. Sarah Whitmore called it the renaissance the property needed. The numbers told the story: 340% ROI in year 1, 7 acquisition offers on the table, and a waitlist of investors wanting in on our Series C. Richard had retired to the Connecticut estate, officially pursuing philanthropic interests. Unofficially, Patricia told Aunt Diana he spent his days reading articles about my success and muttering about ingratitude. Marcus took a mid-level position at a competing firm, finally forced to build his own reputation. His LinkedIn showed he was excited about new challenges and growth opportunities. Emma said he'd actually become decent at his job once he stopped expecting promotions based on his last name. I'd moved permanently to Miami, closer to our properties and further from memories. My new office overlooked Biscayne Bay, with a view Richard would have killed for. But I'd earned it myself, without taking anything from anyone. Success, I learned, isn't about proving others wrong, I told a reporter from Forbes. It's about proving yourself right. The article included a photo of me at Sapphire Cay, standing where Richard had tried to have me removed. The caption read, "Brooke Caldwell at her flagship property, where family drama became business triumph." The sweet taste of vindication had evolved into something better: peace. October brought an unexpected message from my younger sister Sophie, who'd remained strategically neutral throughout the family war. "Can we talk? I need advice, and you're the only one who actually built something real." We met at a Miami coffee shop. Sophie, 28 and brilliant, had been working at Caldwell Properties since college, trapped in the same golden cage I'd escaped. "I have a startup idea," she said, sliding a business plan across the table. "Sustainable housing for climate refugees. But Dad says it's charity, not business." I reviewed her proposal. It was solid, innovative, needed. Everything Richard would hate. "He's already threatened to cut me off if I leave the company," Sophie continued. "Mom says I should be grateful for the opportunity at Caldwell Properties." "What do you want?" I asked. "To build something that matters, like you did." She paused. "I saw how they treated you. For years I stayed quiet because I was scared. But watching you at that gala, seeing you own your success without apology, I realized I've been choosing their approval over my dreams." I agreed to mentor her, to introduce her to investors who understood that profit and purpose could coexist. Within 3 months, she'd raised $2 million in seed funding. Richard was furious, Patricia disappointed, but Sophie was free. "Thank you," she texted after closing her first deal, "for showing me that family isn't about blood or approval. It's about who shows up when you're building something from nothing." She was right. My real family had become Sarah Whitmore, Daniel Morrison, the team at BrookTech who believed in the vision. The people who saw my worth before it had $1 billion valuation. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. November arrived with a handwritten letter on Richard's personal stationery, forwarded through my lawyer. "Brooke, the past months have provided time for reflection. Your success with BrookTech Hospitality demonstrates capabilities I failed to recognize. The Sapphire Cay acquisition was strategically sound, and your execution was flawless. Perhaps my traditional views clouded my judgment. The business landscape is changing, and you clearly understood that before I did. Caldwell Properties Board has made that abundantly clear. You've made something of yourself. If you're willing, I'd like to start fresh. No business entanglements, just father and daughter. Patricia misses you, and the holidays approach. Richard." I read it 3 times, searching for the apology that never came. He acknowledged my success, but not his cruelty. He recognized my strategy, but not my pain. Even in admission, he couldn't simply say I was wrong. I kept the letter in my desk drawer, unanswered, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. He wanted to start fresh, now that I'd proven valuable. Where was that desire when I was struggling, when I needed a father, not a judge? Sophie asked if I'd respond. "He's not apologizing," I told her. "He's renegotiating, and I'm done negotiating for basic respect." The letter ended with, "You've made something of yourself," as if my worth was something I'd created rather than something he'd failed to see. I'd spent 8 years trying to earn his approval. Now that I had it, I realized I didn't need it anymore. The validation I'd craved had become irrelevant, replaced by something far more valuable: self-respect. Some letters don't need answers. Their silence says everything. Thanksgiving 2024. Instead of the cold Caldwell estate in Connecticut, I hosted dinner at Sapphire Cay. 30 guests gathered on the beachfront terrace, not blood relatives, but the family I'd chosen. Sarah Whitmore sat at my right hand, the place of honor. Daniel Morrison and his family had flown in from London. My core team from BrookTech, the people who'd believed in the vision when it was just PowerPoints and promises. Sophie came too, brave enough to choose growth over approval. Even Mr. Yamamoto attended, flying in from Tokyo. In Japan, he said, we have a saying, the bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists. You bent without breaking, Brooke. That's true strength. As sunset painted the Caribbean gold, Sarah stood to give a toast. Her voice carried across the water. To Brooke, who taught us that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up, who celebrates your victories without envy, who supports your dreams without conditions, who sees your worth without requiring proof. 30 glasses raised to the sky. Not one of them belonged to my immediate family. Emma had texted earlier. Dinner at the estate is miserable. Dad won't stop talking about betrayal. Marcus is drunk. Mom's crying. Wish I was with you. Next year, I'd replied, you're always welcome. Looking around my table, I saw faces that reflected genuine joy for my success. No one here had ever called me a disappointment, told me I was lowering standards, or tried to erase my existence. This was my family now. Chosen, cherished, celebrated. To new traditions, I toasted. To building tables where everyone has a seat, where success is shared, and where love doesn't come with terms and conditions. Looking back now, I realize the revelation at Sapphire K wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation, showing my truth in the most undeniable way possible. Richard taught me that business was theater, that power was performance, that the right stage amplified your message. He just never imagined I'd use his own lessons to direct a show where he wasn't the star. The irony is perfect. I became everything he claimed to value: successful, strategic, wealthy, powerful, but I did it without his name, his connections, his approval. And that's what he couldn't forgive. Not my success, but my independence. Some people ask if I regret the public nature of the reveal. Couldn't I have told him privately? But privacy was what enabled 8 years of erasure. Privacy was Patricia's let's not make a scene. Privacy was Marcus's smirks behind closed doors. They'd made my dismissal public. At every gathering, every dinner, every opportunity to introduce me as the one who walked away. So yes, the revelation had to be public. Not for humiliation, but for accountability. When you diminish someone publicly, the correction must be equally visible. Your worth isn't determined by those who can't see it. It's defined by what you build when you stop seeking their approval. I built a $2 billion company. More importantly, I built a life where respect isn't negotiable, where boundaries are sacred, and where family is defined by love, not blood. The Caldwell name still opens doors in real estate, but the Brooke name? It opens doors everywhere else. And that's not revenge, that's just reality. Sometimes the best response to being underestimated isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right, so spectacularly that their opinion becomes irrelevant. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't defined by others' blindness. Comment below about your moment of vindication when you finally stood up for yourself. Subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and finding your true value. And remember, sometimes the best family is the one you choose, not the one you're born into. Thank you for watching.